Welcome to Tom's Aquatics profile over the clown loach, also known as Chromobotia macrocanthus. In the wild, reports of the maximum standard length is 15 inches, though 8 inches to 11 inches is more common in captivity. Sometimes they do exceed 12 inches, but that is uncommon. Growth slows down significantly once they reach 6 inches in length. Minimum tank size for a group of 5 should be a 125 gallon. I'll go over the reasoning why you need a group of at least 5 in the behavior and compatibility section. Now let's go over habitats for this species. This species has 2 habitats. One for when they are breeding and one for the rest of the year. That is because they are migratory breeders. They move from main river channels to smaller tributaries and flooded forest plains during the wet and rainy season. Because of this migratory spawning behavior, they are found in different habitats throughout the year. The majority of the waterways are tannin-stained and black water environments. They do prefer dimly lit aquariums. The small tributaries in which they spawn typically have dense vegetation, both immersed and riparian. Riparian meaning emergent growth. The substrate of these environments are typically largely detritus and leaf litter, along with submerged tree trunks and branches. Typically, the water in this area is pretty still and very low flow. That being said, their habitats throughout geographic distribution have varying water circulation levels, meaning that they can survive in turbid water, but they do have a preferability towards moderate to low flow. Now let's go over geographic distribution, also known as where they are located in the world. They are native to the Great Sunda Islands of Borneo and Sumatra. In Borneo, they are isolated to western, eastern, and central Kalimantan, which include portions of Kabupaten and Kanyan. Interestingly, because these two populations in Borneo and Sumatra separated 9.5 million years ago, they show regional patterning, specifically the amount of black that is present on their pectoral fin. It appears that Bornean populations have a larger amount of black on their pectoral fin and sometimes have white edging. Wait, actually it's the pelvic fin, sorry for the mistake. Let's go over aquarium setup recommendations. Because they have barbels, which are sensory projectiles which help aid in finding food, it's required to have sand substrate. This is to prevent damage to these barbels and causing trouble finding food. It has to be a fairly intricate setup with lots of hiding spaces and sightline breaks. This is to prevent them from getting bored and bullying each other. The water flow in the aquarium should be low to moderate. They do not like high water flow, though they do like high oxygenation, so you have to strike a balance with that. Typically, the higher the water flow and surface agitation, the more oxygenated the water will be. Decorations are up to you. You can either use aquarium ornaments or you can use driftwood formations and rocks. Just make sure there's lots of places for them to hide and things to occupy their time. Otherwise, it's possible that the group will fail and they will lash out towards the most subdominant male. Remember, they have modified and especially small scales, so their skin is prone to being damaged. Because of that, any ornament should be sanded down to prevent any injury. Also pay attention to any gaps which they can become stuck in. They enjoy squeezing into small crevices and they occasionally get stuck. So keep that in mind when decorating your tank. Now let's go over behavior and compatibility. While they are not especially aggressive, they are extremely active. This means that very small fish like Boreas genus Rasboras could be spooked by their high activity level and are not recommended. Also, they are known to be fin nippers, like most Botia species, so it is not recommended to have long fin species like betas, long fin variants, or others of the kind. Some recommendations for tank mates are as followed. Medium to large tetras and rasboras, docile cichlids, either low or medium aggression level. This includes dwarf cichlids, acaras, and severums, as well as catfish species like Plecostomus and bottom-dwelling peaceful species like Corydorus genus. I said I would get to why you need a group of at least 6. This is because they are shoaling fish, not schooling fish. They are a gregarious shoaling fish that requires groups of at least 5 because the dominant male in groups of 2 to 3 will often bully the subdominant male. You may be thinking, why can't I just keep them by themselves? Well, there are many reports in captivity that they become withdrawn and aggressive when kept by themselves. This is not healthy for the fish and should not be recommended. So get a group of at least 5. That is why I recommend the 120 gallon minimum. Now let's go over the diet in the wild for this species. In the wild, this species preys on mollusks, aquatic invertebrates, aquatic crustaceans, as well as segmented worm species. While juveniles are chiefly carnivorous, they become more omnivorous and occasionally prey on plant matter in the wild as adults. That is why I would categorize them as an omnivore. In captivity, they should be fed an omnivorous diet with adequate plant matter and protein content. They should be spot fed to make sure that they get enough food. Remember, these guys grow fast, up to 6 inches, and require a decent amount of food to reach that growth rate. After that, they will slow down. Now let's go over sexual dimorphism. That is the differences between the male and female gender, which can be visibly seen. Adult females are typically fuller bodied and larger compared to the same aged males. There are some theories that the male's pectoral fin is different than the female's, but these are not proven, so I'm not going to state them. Now let's go over reproduction real quick. Reproduction in captivity is sporadic and not well documented, except by one person, and I will not recommend things based on just one person. Because of that, I'll just go over a brief overview of what happens once they are bred. So remember, these are migratory spawners. They move into smaller tributaries when it's the rainy season, usually around September, though that is changing with climate change, in order to spawn. Like I said, spawning typically occurs late September to early October, though this is changing. They will spawn, the female will release eggs, and they will drift onto emergent vegetation and roots. The fry will grow and eat microorganisms until they reach about 1 inch in length. They will then start to move into the larger main channels, going to larger and larger river systems until they reach the main river channels in their large maximum length. Eventually, they will migrate themselves and spawn in the tributaries. That has been the profile over the clown loach. If you enjoyed this, hit that subscribe button. I will be posting species profiles and care profiles every Friday.